Hey there, today I want to show you something awesome, especially if you're a game developer doing any kind of programming, but even if you're not, this thing is pretty amazing and you're going to want to know about it. It's something that was sent to me by a couple subscribers, Andy, Steven, and Andrew from Infinity PBR. Thank you for sending this over. It's really exciting, and I think it's going to change the way that a lot of us do things in the future. So what is it? Well, ChatGPT is a system built by OpenAI, the same guys that were building the Dolly stuff and all that crazy AI stuff you've probably seen videos about in the past. But this allows you to just ask a question and then get back a relatively good, intelligible answer. Better than just about anything else I've ever seen. And it's kind of amazing. It's interactive, so I can ask it follow-up questions and get really useful stuff. So I have a plan of using this going forward when I run into just things I'm not sure how to do, but I wanted to play with it today and see how good it actually is and show you guys also just how good it is. And I thought, why not see if it can actually run me through the process of building an entire game and writing all of the code for me. So that's what I want to do today. See if we can build Angry Birds, or if ChatGPT can build Angry Birds, how good and how fast it can do it, and what that end result looks like. So I hope you're interested in that. If so, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and share and all that stuff, and we'll get started. So today we're going to test this thing and see if it can make Angry Birds all on its own, or at least give us all of the code and the steps to make Angry Birds without having any prior knowledge. So let's ask it, well, if it can do that. Can you show me how to make Angry Birds in 2D with Unity? I'm going to be specific that I want a 2D one, because I know if I don't say that, it's going to talk about 3D games. So it says, sure, I can help you make a simple Angry Birds game. First, create a new project. Set up a 2D environment by going to Edit, Project Settings, Player, and going to 2D option under the default behavior mode. Okay, so it's telling me how to get into 2D mode. That's kind of nice. I didn't even know that was there. Next, create a new scene. Add a basic ground platform for the birds to sit on by using a 2D physics object, such as a box collider 2D component attached to a sprite renderer. Then create a bird game object using the sprite for the bird's visual appearance. Attach a rigid body 2D component. This is very detailed. That can interact with the game world. You can make the bird's wings flap by adding some animations. Okay, to create a slingshot, use a spring joint 2D component to the. Okay, this is looking pretty cool. This wants me to add a spring joint to a thing, which right now, let's assume I know nothing about any of these, and we're going to have to ask it some follow-up questions. It says, next, create the pig game objects using sprites and rigid body, and then finally add some simple scoring. So I've got a project already created here where I pulled in the art so that we could kind of skip past those steps, because if I have to ask it how to find art, I'm sure it'll tell me how to find art, but, well, let's ask it. Where could I find good art to use for this game? I wonder if it will tell me. There are many sources for game assets, such as the Unity Asset Store, recommended. I'll link that down below. Online marketplaces like the Unreal Engine asset, or Open Game Art. Open Game Art is one of my favorites. I highly recommend that. I'll make sure to link that down below too. So good recommendations. I've already got my own art though. So let's go back up and see what the first step was. We've got create a new scene and add a basic ground platform. So how do I add that basic ground platform? Let's see if I can get a little bit more detail. To add the basic ground platform, use a 2D physics object with a box collider or sprite renderer. Here are the steps to do it. Go to Game Object, 2D Object, create a sprite. In the sprite editor window, import the sprite image needed for the ground platform. And then once the sprite is set up, put a box collider 2D and have it fit. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. We'll follow the steps. So we'll go to Game Object, 2D Object, and Sprite. And here there are multiple sprite options because, well, it's changed a bit. So we're going to actually need to choose 9 sliced. But let's ask it, what type of sprite should I choose? See if it knows. In the Unity editor, when you choose Game Object 2D Sprite, a new one is created with the sprite renderer, so it does not know about the latest version of Unity. So that's one of the things in the little the information at the beginning says it only knows about things from before 2021. So it probably doesn't know that there are a bunch of different sprite options in there for shape. So is there another way to add my sprite to the scene? Let's see if there's another way to do it, because I have multiple options there. Let's see if it knows what this question even means. It's thinking. Oh, there are other ways to add it. Instead of creating a new sprite, you can also create an empty game object, attach a sprite renderer component to it manually. Allows me to have more control over the initial properties. So to do that, I go to game object, create empty, and then add a sprite. I wonder if it's going to give me the option of just dragging an image into, if it's going to tell me about that alternative way to do it. So I can click choose a sprite and add it. So I'll follow the instructions that it's got. Game object, we'll add a sprite renderer, and then we'll assign the ground to it. So that's in my environment folder, and it's going to be this ground right here. All right, let's rename this thing to ground as well. That way I'll know what it is at least. Now it also says here on step 5 that I can add my box collider or rigid body 2D. So let's add the box collider 2D, and let's add a rigid body 2D as well. Rigid body 2D, which I know what's going to happen with that, but let's see. Let's press play and watch our little block, because it should just fall down, and then we'll ask and see if OpenAI knows why my ground is falling. Why is my ground falling down? See if it can understand the context here that we're working on it. We've added the ground and it's falling down. Now hopefully it knows that I just need to make this thing not move. Let's see. If your ground platform is falling down, it's likely because it has a rigid body 2D attached, which is causing it to be affected by physics. So you notice on step 5, it told me to add one though. So let's keep going through and see what it recommends. You can either remove the rigid body 2D component or anchor it in place with a joint 2D component. That's an option, I guess. What else we got? There are some other options here, like maybe changing this to static or kinematic. Let's ask it if we could just change it to static. Could we change it to static instead? What do you think it's going to say? By the way, if you've used this and played with it and have some thoughts on it, drop some comments down below. I'm curious to see what kinds of ideas people are getting with this. So far, I found it useful to answer some random questions, some code questions, like, hey, how do I do this one thing? Or some simple math questions. But I'm curious what kinds of cool stuff people have come up with. So yes, you can change the game object to static, or yeah, on the rigid body, or use a joint 2D. So if I make it static, oh, it still thinks there's an is kinematic box. Okay, that's just because, again, it's slightly outdated. I probably should have just used an older version of Unity. I used the latest text stream, so it's slightly outdated on the way that things are set up. So we'll change it over to kinematic, and that should fix it. And then what about making it wider? How do I make my ground wider without making it look strange and stretched? Because if I just grab it right now and drag it out, it stretches. So let's see if it knows about tiling. Let's get rid of this AI navigation window too. Asking it a lot of questions about very simple basic stuff. And let's get into code after this. So yep, it knows about tiling, so I can just adjust it to tiled mode. Does it tell me to switch it to tile mode? Add components, add the sprite renderer. I've got the sprite renderer. Select the sprite, and then in the tiling section, well, it needs the draw mode. Did it tell me to change the draw mode? It didn't. So I have changed the draw mode to tiled and then drag this out. So it might, again, just be a version issue. So I'll drag this down and get this kind of in position, and then let's start looking at some scripts. So what scripts do I need for this game? There we go. So we're going to need some scripts to control the behavior of the game objects, include scripts for the pigs and the bird Bird movement script can control the movement of the bird when it's launched from the slingshot. Can handle the bird's wing flapping animations and apply forces. That sounds good. A pig that can be hit can apply forces to the rigid body 2D component to make them rotate in response to the impact. So we want to do some cool effects on them. A slingshot script that can handle interaction between the bird and the slingshot, and a game manager that handles the general game. Oh, and it looks like it's handling the UI. Those are some examples of scripts, and we create our own. So let's start with the bird script. What would the bird script look like? That was the first one in the list, so let's see what it gives us. So it says the bird movement script can control the movement and behavior of the game object that's launched from the slingshot. Okay, so here it's going to write up a script. We've got a reference to our rigid body, a reference to the animator. It's making everything nice and public. We'll probably adjust that, but let's just let it go. So it's got launch force, a flapping speed, and a bool for whether or not the bird has already been launched. A speed based on its flapping speed. Okay, that's for the animation. A way to add force. So if it is launched, it adds force, downward, so it's pulling it down, adding some gravity. And then on mouse down, if it hasn't been launched, it looks like it sets it to launched and fires it off. Okay, well, let's copy this code and put it into our game. So we'll have what is this thing named? Oh, it doesn't have an actual script name. Oh, we'll call it bird. Actually, let's ask it. What should this script be named? I'm going to say bird, but I'm curious what it says. It might say bird controller or bird launcher. I don't know. So when you create a script, you can give it any name that you want. The name of the script doesn't have to match the name of the game object it's attached to. It does need to match the name of the class that's in there, though. In the case of the bird movement script, it might be good to call it bird controller or bird movement. Let's just call it bird controller. Create C# script. I'll call it bird controller. Now let's paste that in. If you're familiar with Unity, of course, you probably know that this is going to give us a bunch of errors because it's missing some stuff. The script is partially here, but it seems like the actual class definition and the using statements and all that are missing. So let's ask OpenAI, say, this script doesn't seem to work and has errors when I put it in game. See if it understands what the problem is. If it knows which script I'm talking about and what the actual issue is, that we're missing the class definition and the basic stuff for a Unity component. Okay, so it says it apologizes that it doesn't work. There may be a few reasons why it's not working properly. Some include the script is not attached correctly to a game object. Not quite. Let's give it a little bit more information. Since I already know what the problem is, I'm going to give it a little clue and say, hey, it's missing the class definition, or it doesn't look like a valid component. Let's do that. Say this script doesn't look like a valid Unity component. Is it missing something? Maybe this will help. Maybe it'll understand the problem a little bit better. Because really all we need is the class definition that this is a class that matches the file name and has all our using statements up here. I can see this definitely being confusing though for somebody brand new to Unity starting out if it doesn't get that part right. Oh, it says that it's not a complete and fully functional script. Let's see. Is it going to give me a version that has the class definition? Ah, there it goes. It recognizes that the script is missing the mono behavior class declaration, does not implement any of its methods, meaning it can't be attached. To make it a valid Unity component, which it needs to be to get that on mouse down in the update, you need to have it add the mono behavior class declaration. Let's see if it's going to give me the code for that too. Here's an example of what the modified script might look like. There we go. This is what I wanted to see. Although it did name it bird movement. So it's got a bird movement script. It's got our components that it's putting in there. That's looking better. All right, let's copy the code, paste it in here. Oh, it didn't make it all the way through. Interesting, it didn't make it all the way through the question that time. I'm going to hit try again and see if it gives me the code complete this time. It seems to have failed out halfway through. Oh, maybe I should have asked it more specifically to just write it as a mono behavior. All right, let's try asking it to rewrite it as a mono behavior. Can you rewrite the script as a mono behavior named bird controller? So here, it seems like it's kind of getting there, but it's definitely getting confused. I've actually, most of the time when I write the questions here, it's just giving me back a full component script. So I'm surprised that this time it got caught up, but this is kind of interesting. See what it gets caught up on. So here it's going to give us the script as a mono behavior, a bird controller, perfect. And we'll just paste that in, and I'm guessing that that's going to work and just launch our bird off in the direction that we want to go. All right, so this version can be attached and can be customized. So let's go copy this code. We'll paste it in. And, oh, it's missing the using statements. So let's ask it. Why does it say mono behavior? Let's see what the actual error is. What's the error? Is missing. See if it knows that I need my using statements. It means it's missing a reference to the class. It's built in. Yep. So see if it knows, okay, how to fix it. If your script is named bird controller, The modification, yeah, that's not the problem. Is it missing namespace or using statements? See if I can give it a little bit of a clue. A little hint. Hopefully this actually helps it and trains it and makes it smarter too. I assume that's what happens, but I have no real idea. If you know, let me know. So it knows that some of the things, it knows that vector 2 force mode is in the Unity engine namespace, but not that mono behavior is, or at least it didn't detect it. So let's go add the using Unity engine statement and see that. That fixed it, but I was curious, really curious if it would catch that. So it was missing that at the beginning. That's interesting. Okay, so we've got our bird controller. Let's go put it onto our bird and see what that does. See if it actually goes flying. So we'll go add a bird in. I'm not gonna ask it how to add a bird. We'll just drop in this red beak dude. We'll drag him over here to the left and we'll add our bird controller to it. Now I just press play and I believe it was on mouse down it would launch. So let's go try that out. So I click and nothing happens, but I don't have a rigid body or an animator. So let's go add both of those. We'll go add the animator and the rigid body, and we're gonna need to assign these two. So assign it right there. The rigid body 2D, go assign that right there, save and press play. Now let's click and see if it actually launches with that rigid body. It just drops. Let's ask it again if it knows why. So when I click the bird, it just keeps dropping and never adds force going up. Try to be somewhat specific. So if it's not responding to input and keeps applying the force, maybe a couple possible reasons. The rigid body is not set up correctly. Well, we didn't adjust the rigid body, so let's see if it gives us any adjustments. Nope, the spring joint of the slingshot is not set up. We haven't actually done the slingshot yet, so that's probably not it. Or on mouse down is not being called. If this method's not being called by the script, then it wouldn't be launched. So to fix those issues, one, check the rigid body. Make sure that there's a rigid body 2D set and the gravity scale is set to a value greater than 0, like 1. Is kinematic is unchecked. Okay, so it's not kinematic or anything. We haven't set up the spring joint. What about the on mouse down issue? Is there a fix for that? Because the actual problem that I've got here is the lack of an on mouse down. It's not getting called, and it's because the collider's not missing, or the collider's not there, but I want to see if it knows. So it needs the script to be attached. What else does it need? The script has to be enabled. That's true too. So our bird controller has to be enabled. Does it know that I need a collider? So if it's not marked as public, I don't think that actually matters. At least I didn't think it was. Let's ask it about a collider. All right, so let's go add the collider. So it does kind of know, but it doesn't really know. So it didn't know, but we're giving it hints. So if I add the polygon collider now and press play, I should be able to click on my bird and make him go kind of flying upwards. There we go, he launches upwards. I also probably really want to turn this gravity scale to 0 because the code is already pulling him downward. So there's really not a need to have that extra pull down there. So there we go, he launches up and eventually he's gonna fall back down to 0 because there's some code pulling him back down. At least I thought there was code in there. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, apparently I'm wrong. Put the gravity scale back to 1. I thought that this code had something changing it. Now I want to see what the slingshot code looks like. I'm curious what it's going to tell me to do. So what would the slingshot code look like? See if this makes it a little bit more like an actual Angry Birds and see if it starts adjusting my bird code as well. So slingshot has a spring joint component. It connects the bird to the slingshot, applies launch force to the bird when it releases it. So here's an example script. Let's see, we've got a slingshot controller. Now it gave me an actual controller or script, nice. It's got a reference to the bird, a reference to a spring joint, a max pull distance, a check to see if we're pulling, and then in the update, it's going to move our bird. This is looking pretty good. It's going to move our bird around based on where our cursor is, check to see the distance, and then normalize it or put it at some edge it looks like. Let's see if the bird's not being pulled back. What does it do? Oh, it looks like it didn't make it all the way through this question. This isn't the first time. This is the second time this has happened where the question goes through and it just doesn't quite finish. So let's ask again. So I've asked it 2 more times and it doesn't seem to be able to finish the code. It seems to keep erroring out. And it also is using all of these joints that I don't think it necessarily needs. So I'm going to ask it to try writing it without spring joints. Can you write this code without joints and add the name or using statements, please? Let's see if it can fix the code up and then write it maybe without the joints in there. Because I don't necessarily need joints to launch things. In fact, pretty much don't need to. Okay, here's one with a line render. So let's see what this looks like. Maybe it'll actually complete. So we've got a line render, and this is closer to how I would normally do it too. So we've got a resting position, a max distance, a minimum force, a max force. Flag to check if it's being dragged. Yep, this looks good. It looks nice and simple. Calculate out that position, get the distance, clamp the distance. I love that it puts comments in here explaining what every line is doing too. I don't like having comments in my own code, but when it's generated code like this, I want it to explain what it's doing. So that way, if it is doing something I don't know, it'll be very obvious. Plus, if I want to read through it, I can just tell and I don't have to figure it out. So in our mouse down, we check to see if we're not dragging. And then we set the line render position, set the end line position, so know where we're dragging it to, okay? And then on mouse up, if we release dragging, it still doesn't know what to do. Can you finish the on mouse up method? Yes, I can finish it. Let's see if that's true. Okay, so it did give me my on mouse up, which will set our line renderer back down to nothing and then give us some force. So let's go paste all this code in. We'll go take our code from the slingshot controller, drop it into our slingshot controller script that we'll have to create. And then we'll go add that on mouse up that we had to have it generate. Go finish that, paste that in, and then add in our closing brace. Oh, it looks like we're going to need a launch force variable. Is that not up here? I could ask it. I don't want to have it generate my launch force. I'm just going to create it myself. So just go create a Unity serialized field, and we'll make it a float. Let's go ask it what a good launch force would be. What would a good value be for launch force? I'm curious if it knows. It will depend on several factors. Let's see. I'm going to put it in at 10. I have no idea what it's going to recommend. Oh, let's see, how would we calculate that? So it's recommending we get our launch force from the angle. So in general, the launch force can be calculated using the following formula. Okay, so we'll just copy that. Launch force equals initial velocity times mass divided by the sine of the launch angle. So I'm going to get rid of this field here, and instead we'll go down and add that in. So would that be var launch force? And then we've got to get our, where's our initial velocity? Oh, let's see if it's going to give us the code for it. This is looking better. Okay, so, oh, it didn't give us that code. It keeps giving me errors or like timing out trying to finish the code. Can you finish that update method, please, with the launch force code in it? Let's see if it'll give me that update code with the launch force. Just got to ask it nicely, I think. Okay, that's the trick. There we go. We're getting our launch force, our launch well, we got our launch angle, initial velocity. Oh, this is really cool. So I can see, just for anybody that's watching, if you're just watching along thinking like, how am I going to use this? Like maybe not building Angry Birds, but building any other thing and you've got like a question about how to fix something or how to implement something. It seems like a perfect way to, it's got the formula right here to calculate it out and give us that velocity. I'm going to copy this code, put it into my update, and just see if it works. So we'll paste it in. And then I don't need this launch force because launch force now exists. Oh, I do need to create that as a variable though. Where's my variable? Launch force, turn that into a field instead. So it definitely helps to have some coding experience here. Not have to try to figure it all out on your own, but this is a huge benefit if you just know a little bit of code. So let's go in and try it out. We've got our slingshot script. We'll create a slingshot game object. So here, I'm just going to make a sprite for this. 2D object sprite. I'll make a triangle, move it over here. I'm going to call this slingshot. We'll add the slingshot script to it. And then we've got our bird. Now, does the bird take a prefab or just an actual game object to it? I want to see how this thing works. So find our bird. It looks like it just launches that specific one. So the game object that's in our scene. So we'll start it that way. We'll reference our bird. So here's our bird, drag him in there. And then we need a line renderer. So I'm just going to add a line renderer component. And we'll give it, I need to give it 2 points, 2 positions. Oh, it's already got 2. Perfect. So we'll assign our line renderer, drag that into here, save, and press play. And let's see what happens. Well, it doesn't quite work, right? So there's a lot of stuff missing. First, we need a collider on here. Let's go add a collider. So add a polygon collider onto our triangle there. And we press play and see like it's kind of getting me there, but it's definitely not working as like a full-on game. I've got my line renderer. Okay, that kind of worked and allowed stuff to work, but my bird is falling by default. So how do I make my bird stop falling before I launch it? I have to ask it a lot of questions to solve all of these little problems, I think. So we can use a script that disables the gravity scale. In Unity, the gravity scale makes it not fall, so we can just set that to 0 somehow. Let's see if it's going to give us the code to do that. Here's an example of how that script might look. So in our bird controller, this is going to be an update for our bird controller script. It's going to set gravity scale to 1 if we press the button. Okay. Oh, if get mouse button down 0. So when we left click, it's going to set it to 1. That's not really what we want. How do I make it not fall until we launch it? I mean, I know how to do this, but we'll see. In the existing update script, I wonder if it's going to tell me like, on line 26, set the gravity scale to 1. I'll ask it how I could modify my existing code. Actually, let's do that. Let's let it finish, unless it gives me the good example right here. We've got our full update. If the left mouse is pressed, disable. This is not what I want. This is like a... Oh, well, this was actually getting close. Not exactly, though. So let's just ask how I can add it to this. How could I make the bird not fall by modifying my update method here? And then I'm going to paste in my update method. I want to see if it'll understand my code. It's going to give me lots of info. Or a little bit of info. It's actually pretty useful info. It makes a lot of sense. So it's doing what I would recommend, checking that launch flag. Let's see what the code looks like. There we go. So we'll copy this in. And we'll paste it. Now, I think it's still missing a bit. It needs to set the gravity scale to 1 in here. Oh, and I've added an extra brace somewhere. What did I do? Oh, I lost a brace in my update. There we go. So we pull it back, release, and I don't know where my bird went. So as you can see, it's not really working. There are definitely lots of issues. And honestly, I don't see a new developer being able to get through and like have this thing run them through all of the steps, at least not yet. My guess is a couple months from now, that'll be totally different. But yeah, so if you're watching this in a couple months and it has changed, let me know. But it is really good at answering questions. I do want to show some of the issues though that we're seeing here and kind of explain what's going on there. I think what's happening is it's kind of losing context. There are too many things that are modifying the way that the bird works. The bird itself is launching itself. If we go back into that bird controller script, it's got on mouse up, it's adding force. So it kind of was launching itself and adding some force, and that's an issue. So we could say like, shouldn't the bird not add its own force if the slingshot is doing that? Maybe see if it can figure that out. But the problem here is that, yeah, it really shouldn't. It shouldn't be launching twice. So here you can see in the update, you can remove the code that applies the downward force to simulate gravity. So we could remove that. That's on line 30. Oh, here, it's even going to give us an updated version of that update method. I don't know if it's going to catch the on mouse up thing that we need to remove, though, that adding a force. And it still hasn't captured that we need to actually set the gravity scale in here. But there's also the fact that in the slingshot controller, in the update method, we also add force, which is probably an issue. It probably shouldn't add force every frame. Shouldn't the slingshot controller only add force on mouse up and not in update? See if it detects or understands that line 47 there is bad. And this is what I think it's going to be really useful for, is kind of debugging and detecting issues with like specific little methods, or solving problems that you're just like not sure how to do. Like, how do I make this arrow point in this direction? Or how do I do some navigation from here to there? Or whatever type of maybe less simple problem you've got, you want to put it into there and get a solution for, or something that I'm not thinking of. If you got something that you've put in there that it helped you solve, drop it in the comments too. I'm kind of curious to see what kind of things people are solving. I'm guessing there's a lot of stuff. So here it's giving us the update method. We've got the launch angle, the distance, set line. Okay, cool. So now it got rid of that add force. So we'll copy this script in, or this code in, once it finishes writing it, if it finishes and doesn't give us any more errors. And by the way, that non-completion thing that I've been seeing today, this is the first time I've seen it. I was using this yesterday and the day before. Oh, there it goes. It happened again. And didn't see it, but now I'm seeing it relatively regularly. I don't know why. So let's paste this in over update and over on mouse up. So we've got update, and then we have a new on mouse up. So I'm going to paste this into on mouse up. There we go. So now we've got our new on mouse up. Where's distance for on mouse up? Distance does not exist. Where does the distance variable? Oh wait, these are going into, I see the problem. No, wait, we do have a distance, don't we? Ah, it's right here. It's just not set up as a variable. So we'll make that into a variable. Just make it a field, and I'll do the same for launch angle. Create a field. There we go. Now they're both available. Now this launch variable needs to become public. I don't want to ask it how to do that. So we'll just make it public. Save. And I think we should be able to try it out. Let's go see if it works. My guess is that that has probably fixed our launching and now knows the right way. But again, I had to know enough to give it the right questions to kind of solve these problems. So there we go, lean it, aim it, and it launches, although it's not going in the direction that I wanted. And I'm sure that that's just because if I go look at my slingshot controller, it's probably not using that angle code either. So again, see lots of little issues here, but I still think this thing is freaking amazing. And I think that with a little bit more training, it's going to just probably revolutionize stuff. I can see this as being like the first step to some like Star Trek level holodecks where you walk in and just tell it what you want and it starts generating stuff. I think it's just going to get better and better over time and more powerful. So I think it's really useful if you're trying to figure something out. I think this would be an awesome tool for game jams. You want to try to figure out how to make some new game type, get all of the steps, kind of figure out the problems and some solutions, and then you can even paste in code that's having problems and get solutions to it. So if you're using this at all, you think it's neat, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, share, drop a comment down below, and let me know. And if you've seen something else cool that you think I should do a video about, please send that over to me. I'd love to check it out.